Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast powered by Advanced Takedown Tree Stands, episode number 193. Nick PERCY, Killer Spring Food Plots. Reap what you sow. Please support our sponsors as they make this show possible. Today's show is sponsored by Advanced Takedown Tree Stands, Covert Scouting Cameras, and Morse's Sporting Goods. Big Buck Registry is a virtual museum of hunting stories. We preserve a piece of Americana by interviewing and recording hunters about their hunts and experiences from across the country. And who knows, maybe we'll learn a thing or two along the way that'll help us take our hunt to the next level.
Hi, this is Dan Infold from HuntandBeast.com. You're about to listen to one of my favorite podcasts, Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast.
Hey, this is Liz Mitchell, a deer hunter from Paris, Kentucky. You're listening to my favorite podcast, Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast.
This is Matt Light, former New England Patriot, and you're listening to my favorite podcast, the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Jay, your host of the Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast. And I'm sitting here with my good friend and co-host, Dusty Phillips, right here in Big Buck Studios. What's going on, my friend?
Just sitting in the studio, hanging out, and man, another great podcast coming your way.
Round 2 of Nick PERCY. And Nick was on a while back, and he talked about food plots. He's kind of knows what he's talking about. Got the business called Killer Food Plots. Last time we talked to Nick, I think it was back in June of 2016. We were just about to go into the fall season and prepare for the August planting, all that fall planting that goes into food plots in the fall. Well, fast forward to March, April now. We want to know what types of things we should be doing in the springtime to get our food plots up and ready. And I learned some things talking to Nick during this interview that I didn't know. I didn't know that you could plant on frost. Did not know that. I don't know if you knew that, Dusty, but I did not know that.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so it goes to show you how much I know about planting stuff. But really, really helpful. Did not know we could get going on some of these early spring food plots, even when there's some snow on the ground. So if you're like me, this is going to be very helpful for you going into the spring, into the summer. And then you can always listen to our back catalog of Nick going in from the summer into the fall for those that second round of food plots that we talk about.
Yeah, it's that time of year, Jay.
It really is. It's that time of year. And, there's still snow on the ground in New England, but dang it, I can smell spring right around the corner. It's really frustrating, but every time it melts down, here comes another 18 inches, and I think is kind of what's happening at the moment. But anyway, we're going to talk to Nick. We are still looking for harnesses for our harness program, so shoot me an email, jay@bigbuckregistry.com, if you have any harnesses to donate to the program. As always, subscribe and review the show if you could. Give us some feedback and let us know what you think about paying for content that has no ads in it. We're going to be experimenting with that pretty soon, so I need some feedback on that. But before we get there, let's go to Jim Keller with the Deer News.
The Deer News this week is sponsored by the Euro Hanger. You don't have to spend big bucks to hang your big buck. Get yourself a Euro Hanger. Facebook.com/Eurohanger, EUROHANGER.
For the Big Buck Registry, this is Jim Keller with the Deer News. Our first story this week, Michigan DNR awards $100,000 in UP deer habitat improvement grants. This story was originally featured on the TV6 Fox UP website. The Michigan Department of Natural Resources has awarded a total of $100,000 improvement in deer habitat grants in the Upper Peninsula. The funds will be allocated to 11 grant award recipients. The Deer Habitat Improvement Partnership Initiative is a competitive grant program designed to enhance deer habitat on non-state managed lands in the UP. Projects have been approved for partnering organizations in Iron, Gogebic, Dickinson, Schoolcraft, Menominee, Iron, Ontonagon, Chippewa, Luce, Mackinac, Baraga, Marquette, and Delta counties. This season's grant projects involve enhancing spring breakout wildlife openings with nutritious forage, planting large oak saplings in areas impacted by beech bark disease, planting soft mass trees for high-calorie fall foods, conifer plantings in deer wintering complexes, creating hunter walking trails, and scarifying land within deer wintering complexes to promote the regeneration of long-lived conifers and other trees that need bare mineral soils exposed to grow in. Now in its 9th year, the initiative is supported by the state's Deer Range Improvement Program, which is funded by a portion of deer hunting license revenue. To date, a total of $450,000 has been spent on 60 grant projects. Grant-funded projects have been completed in every UP county involving hundreds of individual private landowners and thousands of acres of deer habitat. For more information, visit the DNR website at www.michigan.gov/DNR-grants. Florida has won the battle against screwworms. This story was originally featured on the Jacksonville.com website. The Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services says it will wind down its response against flesh-eating maggots that threaten small endangered deer in a national wildlife refuge in the Florida Keys. New World screwworm can eat livestock and pets alive and once cost the U.S. livestock industry millions every year. There hadn't been a U.S. infestation in over 30 years until agriculture officials confirmed in September that screwworm was killing the dog-sized key deer whose range is limited to a national wildlife refuge. The department said in a news release that the checkpoint for the New World screwworm in Key Largo will close at 7 p.m. Saturday. This comes after more than 5 months of aggressive response efforts and no new screwworm infestations found since January 10th. City spent $2,778 per deer vasectomy on Staten Island so far. This story was originally featured on the SLive.com website and reported by Anna Sanders. The city spent $2,778 for every deer vasectomy performed during the first year of the management program, according to the Parks Department numbers. Agency contractor White Buffalo Incorporated was paid $2 million this fiscal year to carry out the city's plan to cut down Staten Island's white-tailed deer herd. 78 male fawns and 642 adult bucks were given vasectomies through Monday, the last day of the effort this fiscal year, according to the Parks Department. At 720 deer for $2 million, each surgery costs $2,777.78, almost 2 to 3 times what a human vasectomy costs. White Buffalo will continue performing vasectomies in August, 2 months into the city's next fiscal year. The city's contract with White Buffalo is for up to $3.3 million over a 3-year research study. Anthony DiNicola and his team at the wildlife conservation nonprofit are also tracking deer with ear tags, radio collars, and trail cameras. 40 bucks and 45 doe had radio collars as of Wednesday. Only 527 deer were found on Staten Island during the city's latest aerial survey of the herd, 236 less than a count 3 years ago and well below what the city expected. They are likely well over 1,800 deer living in the borough now, more than 3 times the city's last count, and a 7,400% increase since 2008. Wildlife biologists believe bucks make up 40% of suburban deer herds that aren't hunted. Based on the number of vasectomies performed, the herd likely has a minimum of 1,800 deer. The total size is probably larger than that, as fawns haven't been the city's focus for the vasectomy effort this season. The 3-year vasectomy effort is expected to eventually reduce the herd 10 to 30%. Still, some wildlife experts thought the plan won't work because the city is ignoring basic deer biology and conventional herd management practices. The Parks Department believes the herd is now growing mostly through reproduction, not migration, and sterilizing males instead of females is meant to be faster, cheaper, and more humane. 5 deer were euthanized by the city as of Monday after getting injured during the capture attempts. This is required under the city's state permit for the vasectomy program. That concludes this week's edition of the Big Buck Registry's Deer News. For links to the stories featured this week, please check our show notes at www.bigbuckregistry.com. If you have any ideas for future topics or have questions about any of these topics, please email me at jim@bigbuckregistry.com. For the Big Buck Registry, this is Jim Keller with the Deer News.
Thanks to Jim Keller for the Deer News. Without further ado, here's Nick PERCY.
Nick PERCY, welcome back to the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Just like to have you back on the show, man. It's been a little while, and it's that time of year where things are thawing out, and we're thinking about greenery growing around our yards and our food plots, and we thought there was really no better time to have you back on and tell us what we need to be thinking about this time of year. And I don't know if that's what's happening in your neck of the woods, but I mean, I still got snow on the ground. But
Yeah,
but spring is on my mind.
absolutely.
So what's going on in your world,
Well-
Nick, right now?
Well, we, here in Michigan, we do have some areas in northern Michigan that still have some little pockets of snow here and there, but for the most part, the snow is gone, and the frost is, in some areas, slowly coming out of the ground, but down here, mid-Michigan and south, I think the frost has pretty much exhausted itself back into the atmosphere, so, a lot of people are out working their ground and pulling soil tests, getting soil correction into the ground so that come warm weather time here in another month or so, they're able to get their plots in the ground.
Very nice. Very nice. All right. Some things that we got to cover with you right now, Nick, and I got to talk about the zone stuff. On your website you have zones, and I usually when you're stuck in your zone, all you think about is your zone. But the show is a national show, so I think we got to kind of dig deep here, no pun intended, and get into some of the zones that are covering the United States. And let's first talk about the zones and why they're important. I know you have on your website. Well, why separate the United States into 4 different zones, for example?
Well, the zone chart dictates, obviously, in the north, we have just discussed, we're talking about the frost, and the frost is driven quite deep into the ground through our hard winter, and which we didn't really have a hard winter, but normally speaking, we would have, we could have a couple feet of frost down into the ground, literally, in some of the far north reaching states.
Okay.
They get significant winter. Whereas, in zone 2, you get considerably milder winter conditions. You still may have some frost and some snow in the upper part of zone 2, but as you get to the lower part of zone 2, you get less and less frost. Zone 3, that's not necessarily very cold, not driving frost in the ground, although you have, surface frost or, a few inches deep. And then, of course, you have your southern zone, zone 4, where that being on the ocean, you don't have anywhere near the frost concentration. It stays warmer. Obviously, we all go to the south for the winter to get away from the snow. At least we hope to vacation there. And so the importance of that zone map is as the, atmospheric changes happen and the temperatures start to rise, people think about air temperature being warm or cold, but what they don't think about is the importance of soil temperature to planting seeds and being successful with their food plot. So if they rush that and get it into the ground, certain species of seeds can have catastrophic consequences for planting them too early. Okay. Legumes are a perfect example. So if you plant peas and beans and legumes too early, where the ground temperature doesn't stay above 60 degrees at night, they will germinate quickly, and as they start to open, they germinate. They will get cold and then warm, and they actually mold over, and it kills them. So it's really important on certain species of seed that you understand when to plant that. And we list that right on our packages for the temperature-sensitive seeds. Okay. They actually call that 60-degree ground temperature out. So.
Gotcha. All right, let's talk about the zones. I'm going to try to, and if you could jump on your zone map, and I'm going to cover zone 1. Yep. You can cover zone 2, and I'll cover zone 3. So zone 1 encompasses the northern part of the United States. We're talking about Maine, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Vermont, most of New York, the northern part of New York. Talking about like a corner of Pennsylvania, a little bit of the northern part of Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, a little bit of Illinois, northern part of Iowa, all of Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, and we're talking about Montana, Idaho, Washington State, like half of Washington State, a little corner of Oregon, most of Wyoming, and it kind of dips down into that Colorado, Utah area too, by the looks of it, but just a little bit. All right, so that's zone 1. So what's zone 2? What states are in zone 2 that you recognize?
So in zone 2, we are looking at it looks like the latter part of New York, Pennsylvania,
Yep.
New Jersey,
Yep.
Delaware,
Good.
Maryland, Connecticut, Rhode Island. Grabs that little sliver. Then it drops down Delaware, Maryland, part of Pennsylvania, which I may have already said that, part of the majority of Ohio, West Virginia, part of all except the coastal area of North Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, 3/4 of Indiana, 3/4 or more of Illinois, Illinois, part of Iowa, Missouri, Arkansas. Then we jump over and catch the top, a little less than the top half of Oklahoma, Kansas, Colorado, all of Nebraska. So it comes up and then it dips down. It comes through Colorado, Utah, jumps up into the south and southwest side of Idaho, loops up through 3/4 of Oregon, and clips the coastal area of Washington. The northern part of probably, I'd call it a little less than third, maybe 1/4 of California and Nevada.
Okay.
You catch a little bit of the top of Arizona and New Mexico as well.
All right.
I missed those two. So.
All right. And Zone 3, it's kind of the southern part of the state, but not the absolute southern part of the United States. And it's very easy to distinguish. So if you go to let's go to Zone 4. So that's Florida, southern Georgia, southern Alabama, southern Louisiana, southern Texas, southern Arizona, southern New Mexico, and the very, very southern part of California. So if you look at that and you look back at Zone 3, you're looking at southern part, not the very southern part of California, but the midsection of California, the midsection of Arizona, the midsection of New Mexico, the midsection of Texas, the southern part of Oklahoma, southern part of Arkansas, and then northern parts of Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, and South Carolina, and then the coastal part of North Carolina. That's Zone 3.
Yep, and the top half of Louisiana as well.
Okay, gotcha. All right, so those are the 4 zones. So that means something to people planting food plots across the country. And if you don't do it in the right time of year, you could be wasting money, is what it comes down to, I think.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Zone 1. Zone 1's the northern part that we just described. What should we be thinking about for Zone 1, where it's springtime just turned the corner by the calendar?
Correct.
When is it safe to plant in Zone 1?
So what we've been thinking about in Zone 1 is we've been sharing on our Facebook page and Instagram is trying, and at the shows is getting ready, getting out there, getting our frost seeding done. So you can frost seed alfalfa, clover, chicory, some of the grains you can frost seed, but for the most part, we're getting our perennials in the ground, trying to beat the grass and weed development, allow Mother Nature to work for us instead of against us. This is one of those times of the year where we're able to get out there and either overseed our existing clover, perennial, like our clover, chicory, alfalfa food plots, or we're able to establish maybe where we've had a brassica for a couple, 3 years, and it's time to transform or flip that food plot from an annual into a perennial plot where we have a clean slate, not a bunch of grass and weeds. Our brassicas would have choked out or covered up the ground to keep that grass and weed infiltration in the fall eliminated or to a minimum. Then we get our perennials frost seeded, and what frost seeding means is we broadcast the seed right out of our broadcast seeder like we normally would.
Okay.
And then put our fertilizer out, a little bit of fertilizer out if you have the means to do it. But ideally, you don't even put the fertilizer out right away. You just get the seed out. You allow it to get established, allowing Mother Nature from the heaving of the frost, rain, snow, this lovely time of year, but allow Mother Nature to work that seed into the soil without having to go and turn the soil. There are some advantages to that.
That's interesting. So I wouldn't have thought that you could plant or just throw seeds on frosty ground and let snow kind of work it in. But you can do that, is what you're saying.
Yep. Yep, absolutely.
Fascinating. All right, so that's zone 1. Anything else about zone 1 at this time of year? And you, on your website, you talk about April 15th as kind of when you should start planting, but you're saying from this time frame, end of March, you can start frost seeding now. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. Yes. So that planting guide, that's a guide, a guideline to use depending on obviously what the weather is doing, and then of course reading the packaging directions on our Killer Food Plot seed blends. It will tell you if you have to wait a little bit longer than an April 15th planting, or if you're good to go with that planting based on that zone. If there's any special instructions, like I said, like ground temperature for 60 degrees, that would encompass our climatized seed blend or our Border Patrol seed blend. Those two specific varieties need to have 60 degree ground temperature at night. So that's when the sun goes away and, darker than dark, you're not getting the surface of the ground warmed up from the sun. Go out there a few hours after dark, you can literally take a food temperature thermometer and stick it in the ground 3 or 4 inches. You want to test that surface, the top 3 or 4 inches of the surface of that soil, and make sure that you're achieving and maintaining 60 degrees. If you're not able to do that, or you're like, yeah, I don't think I'll be doing that, Nick, you
Right.
can follow your local agricultural pattern. And when farmers start to put in soybeans, I always suggest people wait another week or so after that, just to make sure there's not a zap, because those are often drilled. Farmers are drilling those seeds in, so they're staying below the surface a little bit. They're less susceptible compared to folks that are broadcasting their seed and maybe don't have it in the ground quite as far. So I say wait another week or so after farmers do soybeans, get them broadcast, work them into the soil, and then make sure you call to pack them down, seal that surface up, get that seed secured in the ground, and you should have no issues producing.
Gotcha.
As long as you've done a soil test and taken care of your soil, which will be one of the other points of discussion.
Yeah, well,
we're
going to get deep into that in just a second as well. Okay, so you can, these food thermometers, they cost what, $4 or $5 at a discount store, a couple bucks at a discount store. You can just put them in and find out what your soil temperature is. Now, 60-degree soil temperatures for those blends you talked about, that's pretty warm. I mean, that's got to be, you got to be hitting some warmer temperatures for a while before that happens. It's definitely not happening in Zone 1 right now, is my guess, probably across the country.
No, it is not.
Okay.
No, it is not. It's way too early. But for your clovers, your chicories, some of those seed varieties, and down here in mid-Michigan, kind of if you were to reference a zone map, kind of the middle of the zone right now, if you drew a line straight through Michigan, follow that east and follow that out west, I would say that you could start putting in like our deep woods that has cereal grains, that has some clover, and it has some brassicas that are very, very thin and develop quick, and that can actually produce a really nice early food plot to help the deer rebound, give them some additional carbohydrates and fats that they need here in the spring. They should be consuming about 6.5% fat, is our target when when we're out there, we're trying to put supplemental feed out with our core. That's kind of what we target. So they need about that 6 to 7% fat content still here in the spring. And then as we transition to summer, that drops considerably, down to about 3%. So.
Okay. All right. So skip over to Zone 2, which is kind of that middle section of the United States, as we described a little earlier in detail. That shifts 15 days earlier than Zone 1. So April 1st, which is today, that's when Zone 2 you recommend that you can start planting. And it sounds like what kind of steps am I going through? Am I still testing the soil temperatures? Am I safe, or these are just guides?
They're just guides. They're general. So Mother Nature, she deals us a different hand every year. So you really your seed and your fertilizer and all your time is got great value. So it's very very necessary to check your soil temps, again, depending on what you want to plant. It's in Zone 2 right now. We have a lot of people planting, getting a lot of calls, a lot of emails, a lot of questions, a lot of sales going on in zone 2 into the south this time of the year. People are getting their perennials in. They're calling and asking about, soil tests and, picking up their soil tests, getting those into our lab. They're calling to get interpretation of their soil test results so they know exactly what they need to correct their soil, being proactive. Honestly, in zone 1, right now is a perfect time to start pulling those soil samples in zone 1 and getting those in the lab so you can start being proactive. Zone 2, then, with their activities, depending on how much correction they're doing in the soil, they are planting their perennials, they're planting their spring plots. Further in the south part of zone 2, they are achieving that 60-degree ground temperature at night. So they're already planting their border patrol, they're already getting their climatized in the ground and they're getting their peas, beans, buckwheat, and getting, a kickstart on that, or jump start, I should say, on those particular plots, getting their border patrol screening in, which also has peas and beans, which limits it to that 60-degree ground temperature in the evening.
Okay. Get into the deeper south, not the coastal south, but the deep south, zone 3.
Okay. Zone 3, if you want to make a note, zone 3, the south, zone 3 is spring. It's February 15th through April 1st.
Okay. All right, so that backs it way up even 15th. So you moved it 15 days earlier into February 15th. Got it.
And then zone 4 can be January 15th through March 15th.
Gotcha. All right, so you backed it up even further than that. Okay, so
for zone 4, the far coastal south.
So as you might imagine, zone 1 is your later start. Zone 2, little earlier start than zone 1. Zone 3, earlier than zone 2. Zone 4, you're basically, as soon as the year turns, you're getting into some planning. But that's the deep coastal south.
Correct.
Okay. All right, that makes sense. So, and in these zones, just recap for me what we can plant in each zone, starting in the earliest time frames.
Okay. So in zone 4, which is our coastal south, in the spring, we are targeting, again, early spring because they still get frost in Florida and Texas and things like that. So you have to be conscientious in the beginning. January, they do have some cold times. And so, you need to watch your long-term weather. You can go ahead and do your soil testing, prep, get your soil correction in. And there's a lot of sand down there. So, trying to get that soil built up and start organics fusion, get that worked into the soil, get your lime and any other soil correction that you need to do after you're receiving your soil test results. You can give us a call. We'll help you with that. Then you apply that to the soil. You start with those early perennials or a deep woods or lethal winter oats are really good carbohydrates to help those deer rebound from the winter, give them that food. In the south, there are, some additional food sources available. If your perennials that you previously planted, the deer will have those eaten right down to a nice astroturf, I'm sure.
Right.
From munching on them all winter because they just don't get the snow and the harsh weather down there. They get cold.
Could you give me an example of a perennial?
Yeah, so a perennial would be like our resurrection clover. So that's we have 6 different varieties of clover in our res clover. Another perennial is chicory, our KFP chicory. Alfalfa is another perennial.
Okay.
So those are 3 particular perennials and standard staples in any one of our management plans or the whitetail needs. So protein. That's our green protein source that's critical for the health of the whitetail.
Green protein source. Okay. Gotcha. So does that carry over the exact thing that you just described for zone 4, which is the earliest planting zone that you have? Does that then carry
Correct.
over into the other zones as you move further north as we get deeper into the year?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
It absolutely does. So, and we carry that right up to the point of actually doing frost seeding as we get into the northern zones.
Gotcha.
So we get into the top part of, even maybe in some cases zone 3, we get into that because, let's face it, Georgia and some of the southern states get really cold and do have some frost issues in the far north reaching edges of those states. But generally speaking, you're above that. You're well into zone 2 and zone 1, where you develop any kind of significant frost in the ground, and that's where you've got to be careful how soon you put the seed down for frost seeding, or I should say how late you put the seed down for frost seeding, because if you put it in a little too late, what happens is it'll be warm, right? We have these warm spells. We're in the 50s, 60s.
Right,
That's enough to germinate. That's enough to germinate the clovers, the chicories, alfalfas. And if they come up and they're young and tender, brand new sprouts, and all of a sudden we get a hard frost sets in again, that can also kill that seed. So it's important that if you do get the seed out, you get it worked down into the soil by Mother Nature. You want to do that when there's truly frost in the ground yet, and the snow, the rain, like I mentioned earlier, allows Mother Nature to work that down into the soil, and then the soil protects that seed or holds that seed in the top, less than, the top quarter inch or eighth of an inch, until which time the ground warms up enough to germinate that seed and then support root development, and it allows for the success of those individual seeds.
Okay. And give me one more time what the plants that we should frost seed now.
So frost seeding is our resurrection clover, our KSP chicory, our deep woods could go in right now, KSP deep woods, those, and or our lethal winter oats. Those could go into the ground right now with success without worrying about the back and forth weather in our zones. Now, you guys are telling me you still have significant snow on the ground, or have some snow on the ground.
Yep. Today was the first day, or I should say, as we speak, we're getting snow, but we've had a significant amount of snow up until just this past week, until Wednesday. So Wednesday was really the first day where it probably melted down to about an inch, and you could see some of the grasses starting to pop through. But this is the second time this has happened this winter. So, I mean, we had bare ground for quite a while, got a major snowstorm, over a foot of snow, like 18 inches, and then it's slowly gone away until just this past week. Now we're getting snow again, but that's going to go away very rapidly.
Okay. Well, this is the time for you guys up in New Hampshire. This is the time in the northern states to go ahead and get your seed ordered, get it frost seeded, get it in the ground. If you haven't done a soil test and you're able to extract, some soil to get the amount we need, without breaking your shovel or breaking your shin trying to get the soil sample, you should try to pull that soil sample, get that in the lab now, and then we can turn those soil samples around literally within a week, get your results still within time to frost seed, to make sure that you're not forcing a perennial into a piece of ground that isn't corrected well enough to have success and maintain the life of that seed, again, because we don't want you to waste your time and money putting a product in. We want to make sure you're successful right away. So,
all right. Now, if we're planning now, what's the ultimate goal? Why do we want to plant now? So this is kind of a global view. Why do we want to even get stuff in the ground now? Why are we getting a jump start?
Well, spring food plots and protein that are full of protein are very, very critical to helping your whitetail deer herd rebound from the winter months, from Mother Nature not really producing a whole lot of food throughout the wintering months, especially in the north. It's very, very critical because those deer have been struggling with snow, and it's been covering up a lot of the leftover food sources. There's nothing sprouting out of the ground. It leaves them to feed on the natural browse and the new buds that are coming out on the trees from about 7 foot on down. If you really inspect your landscape and look at your bushes and your trees, you'll be able to tell pretty easily your deer density numbers in any particular area based on how many of those buds still remain below 7 foot to the ground.
Right.
When they're all nipped and gone, that tells you that you had a pretty high deer density or population around your area. And as we progress into spring and leaves start to come out, you'll start to see what looks like a bowl cut. Like you took scissors and cut put a bowl on your head and cut it. That's what a lot of your field edges, a lot of your woods throughout the woods, they're not going to have vegetation growing from 7 foot down. It's going to be very wide open and scarce. And so it's very, very important. They're edge creatures. That's what they live on. Besides their pork steak fat, the only food they really have are those type of browse and or, dead beech leaves and pine needles, which are not very beneficial in any way, shape, or form. They might help them cure some hunger pangs for a moment, but give them something to crunch on, but there are really no health benefits to them. So it's very, very important that we have late winter and early spring food plots that we would plant in the fall that can help to carry our deer through to the spring. But those perennial plots are crucial, very, very crucial at the beginning of the thaw to allow in the green up, the earliest green up comes from your clovers and your chicories, and have those high protein food sources. Our resurrection clover is 35-37% protein. Our chicory is in excess of 40% green protein. So very, very palatable, and that is crucial to help those deer.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Mammals, as they go through their diet and starvation and that whole chain of events. So a mammal will first burn glucose. Then when it doesn't have glucose, it'll burn fat. So when it doesn't have fats, it'll start to burn proteins to turn that into some kind of a food source. And then the minerals go. So as your deer are starving, coming out, and they're filling their bellies with things that are not nutritional, like pine needles, then you're getting into calcium coming out of their bones. You're talking about protein coming off of their muscles. So it sounds like adding more protein right away and probably minerals of some sort to replenish calcium deposits on their bones, and then make your deer herd healthier, faster. And then, of course, the ultimate goal, if you're trying to grow large antlers, would be to have excess nutrition for the rest of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Food is king in the whitetail world, and the right food at the right time, especially in those critical times of the year, will set the tone for not only the deer herd you have, but it'll really set the tone for those fawns that are still developing, especially we talked about it before, the last 30 to 45 days are so critical in the growth cycle of those fawns prior to birth. And then obviously mom, that doe needs to be able to carry out that full 2-month lactation cycle. And up in the upper north country, top of zone 2, majority of zone 1 on north, it's very, very harsh conditions. Hard rut usually occurs, followed by the extreme winter conditions are very make a large impact on those whitetail does and can cause a lot of negative effects in the number of early abortion that happens of those aborting of those fawns, because the does, just their health depletes to a point where they cannot maintain that new life. And if it comes down to that or theirs, it just naturally occurs. So they can go from maybe carrying 2 or 3 fawns down to 1 or maybe none. And so it's very, very critical that we keep a balance in our food. And we're thinking 365 days a year, how am I supporting my deer herd? So that the thing I love to do and the time I love to spend in the woods can be maximized and the deer herd can be at its peak condition.
Gotcha. So looking at your planning guide, and I can't help but ask this question because it's what we're looking at in these zones of the United States. Is there a zone 0 that goes north of the border? When you get into Canada, I mean, is that a whole other ballgame up there?
Oh yeah, their growing season is so short. It's very, very short, but we've been growing in Canada for a long time. The majority of our products will grow and develop. Some better in the southern part versus the far north area of Canada. But again, your perennials, we've been able to successfully grow and maintain perennials that don't frost kill, because sometimes the frost can get so intense on certain species of plants that they just will not survive more than one season planting. So you can't maintain your perennials. And like our chicories do very, very well up there. They put down a 14 to 18 inch taproot about the size of your pinky once it's established. Alfalfa puts down an extremely deep taproot, and so that seems to do fairly well. But most of the time in Canada, we're focused on replenishing and supplying food sources from annual seed varieties. So,
Okay.
whether those are your spring, summer, and fall kind of all bleed together in Canada. You kind of go from winter to a little bit of spring, summer back into fall, winter. So it's
Right.
pretty fast.
Yeah.
Pretty fast.
They have a really, really nice couple of weeks of summer up in Canada. They really do.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Couple weeks.
No.
All right, so we talked about these things you can plan and when to start planting them, but it doesn't do you a darn bit of good if your soil isn't right. So I'm going to turn the microphone over to Dusty, and I want to get into some of the other details of what we need to look out for, what are some of the things we need to adjust. When we do lay down these seeds, what has to be perfect other than temperature of the soil? What kind of other things should we be thinking about?
Getting into that a little bit, I want to break it down, Nick. Nick, can you help us out? Can you break a soil sample down exactly what you're going to do with the shovel and how we're going to break it down?
Sure, absolutely. So when you have decided on the location you would like to put your food plot in, one of the tools that we often use is a soil plug puller, which is like a hollow tube, kind of a sharp edge and a little step on it to drive it down into the soil. But most people don't have that tool available. You can buy it online. You can buy it from us. We can get them. And those will also be on the new website. We're working to put those on, so we have those tools for folks. But a simple pointed garden shovel, yard shovel will be no problem to pull the soil sample with that. You don't need, an elaborate soil puller. However, what you want to do with that shovel, and I say we take that and like a little hand garden shovel, those would be your two tools to go pull the soil sample. And you want to go down about 3 to 4 inches below the root structure of what's growing currently. So that could be grass and weeds. It could be an existing food plot that you've planted in the fall, that, you've got some decaying turnips and radishes or whatever maybe you planted, or you want to go down about 3 to 4 inches, take away that topsoil, that surface soil, and then take that small handheld garden shovel and take a scoop. Now you out of that soil and put it into a bucket. I usually take a 5-gallon bucket, and even I have the soil puller. Otherwise, I grab a shovel, and we're going to take those soil samplings from multiple locations in a food plot. It's important. If you have a half-acre food plot or even a quarter-acre food plot, literally your soil can vary from one corner to the other or from the middle to the end. So it's really important you take 4, 5, 6 samplings depending on the size of your food plot. The larger your food plot, the more samplings you're going to get. I usually would say at a minimum on a quarter-acre food plot, you want to pull about 4 to 5 different locations. Try to pull it just inside off the corners and 1 or 2 spots in the middle. Take that little garden shovel worth of soil, put it in the 5-gallon bucket from each of those locations, mix it up really good, blend it up, and then you need to have at least 2 cups netting, about 2 cups of that soil that's blended together. You would put that into the collection packet that's part of our soil test kit that we offer to our customers.
You're saying that we can take a garden shovel, go out in our predetermined food plot, pull 4 or 5 samples, and what you're saying on a sample, what you're calling a sample, is any soil 3 or 4 inches below the root base. So
what I say 3 to 4 inches from the surface of the soil, which would get you just to about the bottom of the roots of any grass, weeds type of thing. You're just trying to get away from that organic matter. Try not to put rocks and other debris in the soil that you're sending into the lab. Try to get it as clean as you can. So that's where we say we sample down about 3 to 4 inches, get below that vegetation level.
Makes sense. Okay, so we got our shovels, we got our bucket, we got our soil samples. What do we do next?
So after you mix that soil up, and we sell soil test kits here at KFP. They're $20. That covers each soil test area. If you have multiple food plots, it's usually best to do individual soil tests because your soil in one area may need to be corrected differently than another area. If you feel like, hey, my soil is all pretty much the same and I don't really want to spend $20 on 5 different food plots, then you can mix them all together in one bucket. However, you're going to be treating them as though they all need exactly the same thing. So that could differentiate, how much money and time and effort you're putting into each plot. There may be some plots that are perfect and others that aren't. And so we say the $20 you spend on your soil test is the smartest, best money you could possibly spend, because it establishes the blueprint of what's going on in your soil on that particular location. So once you sample the soil, you mix it up, you put it in the collection packet. We always suggest that you fill out the little pouch with the relevant field number, your name. When we send them, we'll usually put our account number right on there, so they're always identified. Then there's also a collection sheet. You're going to fill out your name, your address. It's really important to put your email, because if you put your email, you're going to get your results within 3 to 5 days, usually, of the time that you drop them with USPS or however you're mailing them in. That's what we usually do, priority mail them in. And you'll get the results literally within a week to 10 days maximum during peak time. And then that form and that packet go in the box together for each one. You want to make sure that you put a field name or number. You can number it 1, 2, 3, 4. You can call it, Pappy Shack, or whatever name you have for that particular stand or food plot location. You want to make sure that it's on the pouch and on the paper, because our lab technicians are going to keep those two things together. And we want to make sure that if they get separated, they can always be brought back together to get you your result in a timely manner.
Okay, so we pulled our sample. We've shipped our sample to you. What happens once we get the results back?
So once you get the results back, people are often intimidated by a soil test results. Ours are very, very simple. Once we point it out and on the initial phone call, the customer can pick up the phone. They can give me a call, say, "Hey, Nick, I got my test results. Do you have a few minutes to go over them with me to explain it to me?" And myself, my wife, one of our pro staff, whomever takes that phone call, we're able to explain from left to right. The first thing you're going to see is how many pounds per square foot or tons per acre of lime that's required if you have to correct your pH in your soil, which is a very critical thing in order to be successful. But we're going to check multiple things within that soil that are critical to plant growth and plant development. And then we're going to make a recommendation of how much needs to be supplemented in the soil of those particular nitrogen, phosphorus, potash, magnesium. The nitrogen levels are really critical in growing certain plants, whereas, others don't need as much. So we want to be able to establish what is missing in the soil, where the holes are, and what we need to do to fill them. And we will help translate that for the property owner, the customer. And we'll also explain how to read the soil test results. So in the future, when they do soil tests, it will be much easier for them to feel much more confident in understanding what's being shown on the piece of paper, so that they can go to their local co-op or their local extension and be able to get the products they need to do those correcting of the soil.
So once we've got our soil sample, we've contacted you, Nick, and you give us the recommendations on what to apply. Now, a lot of times that a hunter doing a food plot that may not have the equipment. Is there different methods to applying lime and different limes that you can put on the field?
Are there different methods to be able to put down lime? Yes, there are different pieces of equipment, different ways to do it. There's also different types of lime. So pellet lime is small, round BBs, pretty symmetrical BBs. That pellet lime is made to correct the soil very quickly. It will start to effectively improve or increase the pH number, because low pH is bad. You're targeting 7.0 is perfect pH. You're targeting somewhere between 6.5 and 7.5 to effectively grow or maximize the growth in your food plot. That doesn't mean that you have to be perfect in order to grow a food plot. We have plenty of seed varieties that will start to grow and produce significant vegetation that's very desirable to your whitetails, much lower than that. So don't give up hope yet if your pH isn't perfect. But there are particular seed varieties that you need to have better pH or better soil conditions to be successful with. Alfalfa is a perfect example. It's very, very particular. It likes to have perfect 7.0 pH and other conditions within the soil to be ideal. Our clovers are more tolerant. Our chicory is a little more tolerant, so it doesn't need perfect conditions from that perspective. Whereas other annual varieties, again, they're not they don't need a perfect condition going on in the soil. So to answer your question on the pellet lime or on lime, there's pellet lime, fast acting, starts working in 2.5 weeks to sweeten that ground. It needs moisture to start breaking it down. And lime, very important, lime neutralizes soil. One particle of lime must touch one particle of soil to neutralize it or to get it to that 7.0 state. And so it's important that you work lime into the soil. Now, if you have no equipment, but you can get it like a heavy tine rake, what I encourage people to do this time of the year when there's no vegetation on the ground, get that pellet lime out there. If you're going to use ag lime, you have limited ability to, or limited access with equipment, or don't have tractors and big ag lime spreaders, you can buy like 40-pound bags of ag lime, split the end of it open, and sift it out by hand, kind of tossing it back and forth. I really encourage people to wear a cover, a face guard, or something, a mask over their nose and mouth, because lime is really nasty stuff to be breathing in and getting in your lungs. So I would always encourage that, especially with powdered lime. But even pellet lime, when you're running out of a spreader and the wind blows the wrong direction, it's not a good thing to be inhaling. So, but you work that out you dust that out into your seed bed, take a heavy tine rake, and just scratch and work it into the surface of your food plot. And then allow Mother Nature, through the rains and the different things going on this time of the year, to kind of work that down into the soil. Pellet lime starts working at 2.5 weeks, and it'll be there for 2.5 to 3 months of sweetening, where ag lime doesn't really start taking effect or sweetening the ground for about 2 to 2.5 months, but it'll last you 2+ years of, as you work it around and continue to manipulate in the soil, it will neutralize your soil for longer periods of time. Gotcha. That was a really long explanation.
No, that's perfect. Now, applying lime, should I burn down the existing weeds that are present at the time that I apply the lime, or is it okay to go ahead and apply lime with weeds visual?
So, as you're preparing or getting ready to prepare a food plot, the one thing you want to avoid is you don't want to give the grass and weeds any kind of advantage over your newly seeded food plot. So it's very important that you spray to kill off the grass and weeds that are currently there alive and kicking, so to say. You want to kill them to the root. You want to eliminate the competition that is going to be competing for nutrients, moisture, and sunlight within your food plot in order to have the greatest success.
Well, is there any recommendation you can make to burn down the existing weed? What do you suggest we do to get rid of the weeds?
Well, if you usually we're using a Roundup type product, whether that's a true Roundup brand or some generic. The glufosinate is the most important ingredient. That's what you're paying for to be able to kill that off. The difference between the different brands or varieties, whether you're going to a TSC or Family Farm and Home, Big R, whatever, Rural King, wherever it is that you're going to buy it, you want to make sure, and we recommend you're going to some at least farm store or some type of a chemical farmer chemical depot in your immediate area. Go there and buy Promax Roundup, a higher quality bulk than just your farm and garden at like the home store in your area. That's not as necessarily as concentrated. So then you want to mix that glufosinate at a ratio of 3 ounces. I'll say 3 ounces of Roundup per gallon of water is your application on your food plot. And I would say a minimum of 25 gallons of water with 75 ounces of Roundup per acre to effectively kill that in somewhere around 10 to 14 days. It should be dead and ready to begin the planting process.
Right. And in most cases, a lot of times, just for speaking from experience myself, is I use what's called a Buccaneer, and it's just a generic Roundup. It's full concentrate. And, if you're intimidated by purchasing a 2.5 gallon jug of Roundup, all the mixing recommendations are listed right on the label of the container that the herbicide comes in.
Yes, they are. Yep. And at any time, anybody can email me or Facebook message us or text us as well. Give us a call. We'll be more than willing to help them figure that out and give them the same information so that they need.
Very good. Wow, we've covered a lot of things there, Nick. And as far as soil sample and preparation to get ready to put the crop out, you're spot on for breaking everything down to what we need to do.
Well, hopefully I can help some people have some greater success from the sharing of the knowledge, and hopefully the long lessons learned that I had over the years of doing this.
Nick, on the last show, we asked you to tell a good deer story, and the last time it was before the fall, so I want to see if you had any new deer stories you'd like to tell. If not, then I'm going to jump over to the 10 rapid-fire questions, if that's all right.
Okay. Honestly, I don't have a great deer story because I was so committed to my customers last year that I had several calls during deer season with frustrated. These were new customers that were calling and saying, I'm so frustrated. I'm not seeing the deer numbers. I'm not seeing what I would hope. Will you please come help me in the middle of deer season so I can hopefully have some success before it's over? And, you guys know me well. I can never turn down a customer.
Right.
I could never do it. And I said, well, I'm going to finish up what I'm doing here, and I'll be on my way. I mean, that's just,
Gotcha.
we try to be there. So I hunted 2 days. Okay. I'm in the hunting industry. I love it. I'm so passionate about it. And I'm so committed that I only hunted 2 days. Thanks to my good friends at Wildside Outdoor Adventures in Indiana, really good buddies of mine. They run a little outfitting business. They had invited me, and I had committed, and I was not going to move that off the calendar. So I did get 2 days of awesome hunting, saw a couple mid to upper 130s bucks, management, well-managed piece of ground for, well over 100 years that has been in this family and that they've owned this property. So great to see them up close, bow hunting, type distance, but we happened to be gun hunting for those 2 days. So, but
Gotcha.
I didn't harvest a deer, had a great time with friends, and that's my deer story for the year.
All right. That works.
Short and sweet.
I was going to say, if I know you the way I think I know you, that means you sacrificed your own deer season to go help somebody else with theirs.
Absolutely. That's
what happened.
That's where my passion is. So
right.
That's my passion.
That's all right. Let me get into the 10 rapid fire questions here, Nick, and then we'll
Certainly.
get a little information on where to find you. All right. What's your number one deer hunting tip of all time?
Entry-exit strategy is the most important to being successful.
Okay. We all have these things that we can't hunt without. They're kind of like good luck charms, or just maybe they're really a device that we need to hunt. Other than your weapon, what's that one thing for you that you have to have with you, and if you leave it in the truck, it drives you nuts all day?
I don't have one.
Okay.
I don't have one. Let me think. You
Some-
can ask me the question again. I don't know.
Some people don't have them. It's on occasion we get those answers. I don't have them. I just don't have them. And that's totally cool. Totally cool with us. All right. What's your biggest pet peeve in life?
My biggest pet peeve in life, people who complain about things but don't have any solutions to offer.
That's a good one. That is a good one. All right. You're at a hotel lobby at a convention somewhere in the world, and they ask you what you do for a living. What do you tell them?
I tell them that I do wildlife restoration.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good way to put that. All right. How old are you today, Nick?
I am 45.
You're 45 years old. What would you tell the 25-year-old Nick PERCY knowing what you know today?
Shut up, listen, and do not use your hands for hammers, and do not jump off of high places. Do not beat your body up, because you're going to feel a whole lot older than 45 by the time you're 45. And I some days really do. So I did not listen to those wise men I worked with that said, go grab a hammer, go grab the right tool, don't use your hands, don't kick it, don't hang out on your knees. And I'm paying the price today for not listening, being stubborn.
It is weird how your hand will not pound a nail, isn't it? It seems like it should, but it doesn't. It just won't do it.
It's so funny. At 25, it's cool when you do it and your hand bleeds and you feel tough. When you're 45 and do that, you're like, okay, dummy, go get a hammer.
Right. That was stupid.
So
exactly.
Right.
What did you have for breakfast this morning?
The same thing I eat every single morning is a breakfast burrito from McDonald's, no sauce, a fruit parfait, and 2 large unsweetened iced teas with light ice. Those are Nick PERCY trademark breakfast right there.
No kidding. All right. That's
every morning.
That's the answer we've been looking for on this show for a very, very long time. And boom, we get it from Nick PERCY. This is great. All right.
Oh, shoot.
All right. You can have your own billboard on the side of a highway anywhere in the country. It's a blank canvas. What would you put on it?
What would I put on it? Honestly, probably one that, may not be always the most popular one, and it would be, do you have a relationship with Christ? Okay. Honestly, that's what I would put.
Gotcha. All right.
Do you know Christ? Yeah.
And so there's a higher being, higher than killer food plots. So that's where you're going to go. Gotcha. Very
Absolutely. Good. Driving my bus every day.
Driving your bus. All right. Very nice. If I say the word successful to you, who's the first person that pops into your head and why?
Who's the first person that pops in my head for successful? One of the most influential people in my life is Dale Carnegie. And just the importance of people skills, caring about people, being a servant to others in your quest for success. Success comes from having integrity, doing what you say you're going to do, caring about others, putting other people before yourself, trying to make a difference and impact people's life for the better, and being remembered for it.
That's awesome. I'm actually a very big Dale Carnegie fan myself. That's a fantastic answer, and I haven't had that one yet either. All right. If we go to, let's see, what's a typical day in the life of Nick PERCY look like?
Oh, well, it's pretty crazy, pretty hectic. Get up every morning about the same time, brush my teeth with my pattern. I get up, brush my teeth, turn the shower on, make sure it's warm, jump in, jump out, go to McDonald's, gotta get my breakfast burrito, my 2 iced teas, my fruit parfait, head to work, rolling to work, certainly after 8 o'clock every single day, because I've been up till probably 3:30 in the morning, answering customer emails, Facebook messages, sending quotes. I begin my day as a program engineer, checking emails, trying to respond to, I deal a lot with Europe, my European colleagues, because I am responsible for a lot of the European model vehicles and launches, new products that we're going to be launching. And then jump into my meetings, do my work day, which can sometimes, it seems like lately, go till 7:30 at night. I race home, either to my condo to start working again, second job, make some dinner in the middle. My wife and I get busy working on some of those things, answering calls, returning the many phone calls we get throughout the day that I wasn't able to cover at breaks or lunch or whatever in between phone calls to my normal day job. And we usually burn the midnight oil till I fall asleep face down on my laptop. And that's the truth. It happens a lot. I wake up, I go to bed for an hour to 3 hours, get up, take a shower, and do it again. So
wow. All right. Face down on the laptop every night. That's quite a visual. Quite a visual. All right. Finally, Nick, of the 2 days you could get to hunt per year, what's a typical deer hunting day in your life look like?
Well, that would be up very early to the woods very early. I really enjoy that time in the dark, just listening and watching the sunrise and the woods come alive and just kind of taking it all in. Sit there all day. I do not usually, once I go to the woods, it's towards the end of October. On a typical year that I will start my hunting, and I may hunt opening day or two. If I've got a particular deer I'm targeting in or on a piece of property, and I'm trying to catch them in the feeding patterns. But honestly, I don't hunt too many more than 2 to 3 days, and then get out of that property. I don't want to overpressure or push those deer off the property. And it's a tough time to hunt in the early season with the heat and the swirling winds, and there's a lot of thermals. So
right.
I usually return to the woods towards the end of October, sometime past 20th, 22nd, somewhere in there. And then I hunt pretty consistently. I'm in the tree from before sunup to sundown. So I pack my snacks, I eat my McDonald's, stop at the rest stop, decent myself from that. Make sure I have plenty of iced tea with me in my backpack, and head to the woods. So, and I will literally sit there all day. I just love it. Napping is part of hunting to me. So
right.
I don't sleep very soundly, and that's kind of my regain my sanity time of the year.
It's interesting you say that because just looking back over the years of the great days that you've had in the woods, the best days that I've ever had involved some kind of McDonald's meal, whether it be breakfast or a lunch, and a nap in the woods. Those always somehow were connected to some of the best, most successful deer hunting days I've ever had. So I'm with you.
Yep, they definitely are. Oh, that's funny. That's true. Very true.
Can't explain it, but it's true. All right. So, Nick, if we wanted more information about you or Killer Food Plots, or had more questions for you, it sounds like you answer a lot of emails from customers, and I'm sure we touched on a lot of subject matter in this show, and I'm sure we've left a lot of questions to be unanswered, and there probably will be some more questions to come. Where can we reach you after the show ends?
You can reach out to me at killerfoodplots.com. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and I would say Facebook and killerfoodplots@yahoo.com is our email. There's also a contact us page on our killerfoodplots.com on our website. You can go to the contact us page, fill out your name, number, information. If there's a comment box, say, hey, I'd like to talk to you about, soil samples, or I heard about the soil testing thing, and it's, seems complicated to me. Whatever it happens to be, shoot that off to us, and then we'll try to respond to you within the day or within at least a couple of days if we're at peak time.
Gotcha. All right, very cool, man. I appreciate it, Nick. It's been a pleasure, as always, talking to you and getting some laughs in and learning a lot from you. You're certainly a wealth of information that's about stuff and things that I don't think about every day, but you're the guy I turn to when I need that kind of information.
Well, I appreciate it, guys. Thanks for having me on, and I always like to share the things I've learned, in most cases the hard way, with bloody hands and jumping off high places and using my hands as hammers. So let's avoid that for other people. Hopefully they'll learn from my knucklehead way of learning things sometimes and have that success. So thanks again. I appreciate it.
Oh, the guy's just a wealth of information. I learned a lot, once again, from Nick. So now we've got 2 in our catalog with Nick, and I think they're done exactly at the appropriate time of year. So you've got this one for the spring food plots, and you've got the other one that we did in June last year for your fall food plot. So I don't think you can go wrong. It's going to get you planting and growing great things for your deer herd and getting lots of protein and nutrition back into your deer herd when they need it most, and get them growing those big antlers in the fall when we want to see those big racks running around the woods. So
just amazing the wealth of information that we got out of Nick, and broke down a few things that some may have questions on, Jay, and I think that we educated some future food plotters.
I agree, and learned some things that I did not know as a novice food plotter, and I am admittedly still a novice and dabble in the stuff. So very helpful stuff for me, and I'm sure it'll be very helpful for lots of other people. Dusty, do we have a Chubby Tines tip of the week this week?
Yeah.
The Chubby Tines tip of the week is sponsored by Morse's Sporting Goods. Firearms, used firearms, bows, used bows, located at 85 Kentucky Falls Road in Hillsborough, New Hampshire. Give Jim a call at 603-464-3444, morsessportinggoods.com. Your dollars go further in New Hampshire. There's no sales tax. Morse's Sporting Goods.
Getting into Nick when food plots are just food for thought here, that your garden tiller can be a food plot piece of machinery. If you've got a way to haul it and you can get it in the woods, take your garden tiller out there, and if it's only a 6-foot wide strip and you can rip it 100 yards long up through the woods, that's better than no food plot at all. So don't overlook that gas-powered garden tiller. Get it in the woods.
That's a great idea. I've got one of those little garden tillers I use for my little gardens around here. I think tears it up pretty good too. It's not one of those big ones, but it's very, very mobile.
Yeah, you don't have to get very deep in the soil to get a seed to germinate. So just take advantage of what you got already and take it to the woods and use it, and try to be successful over a food plot in your woods.
I think that's pretty good. This is the type of rototiller I can strap on the four-wheeler and get out of here and go find something a little deeper where nobody's looking. It's kind of neat.
Yeah, it's pretty basic to get the soil turned over, but that garden tiller you got in the shed will do it.
Perfect. Very, very good, man. Been a great show, and thank you for the Chubby Tines tip of the week. And we're going to come back next week and do it. Dusty, in the meantime, before we get back to the studios, where can we find you?
Shoot me an email, dusty@bigbuckregistry.com. You can look me on Facebook, Chubby Tines Outdoors, @Chasing Antler on Instagram and Twitter. Jay, where can the people reach out to you when you're not on the mic?
Give me a call at 724-613-2825. That's our dedicated hotline. Tell us a story. Tell us what you like or don't like about this show. You can always shoot me an email, jay@bigbuckregistry.com. We're on all social media platforms that are important, and that would be Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. On YouTube, you can listen to our entire show and a bunch of other videos that we've done over there. And that's bigbuckregistry.com/YouTube. If you'd like to submit a picture of your buck that you shot anytime in the last, doesn't matter, you can go to bigbuckregistry.com/mybuck, and all the instructions will be right there for you to follow, and it will be featured if it meets the criteria on our Facebook page. In the meantime, if you listen to the show, there are multiple ways to listen to it. I don't know how you do it, but if you are an iTunes user, please leave us a review and subscribe to the show on a weekly basis. We are also on TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Blubrry, and of course, as I mentioned, we're over on YouTube as well. Dusty, I think that's everywhere we are at, and I think that's a wrap, my friend.
Awesome show, and get out there and enjoy the outdoors. I'm Dusty Phillips.
And I'm Jay Scott.
And this is the Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast. We'll see you next week.
Can't wait.